Welcome to my channel. My name is Nicole and I like to do fashion DIYs, and in today's video I am taking a few items that I recently hauled in my most recent thrift haul, which I will have linked down below, and I am going to show you what I do with them. Two things aren't super exciting, I'm just hemming them, so I'm going to keep those tutorials brief. But the third item is what I am most excited about, and it is this silk top transformation. I haven't even really figured out entirely what I'm going to do yet, so I just have some sort of vision in my head and hopefully we can recreate that. So yeah, let's see how this goes. But before I get started, please be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you like what you saw. And yeah, now let's get into the tutorial. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to be reworking is this denim jacket type thing that I thrifted. I really liked how it looked on me, but I did feel like it was a little long, so I am going to pop this on and measure out where I want to hem it. So this is the jacket on. I love the boxy fit, but I would love it even more if it was a few inches shorter. Because I really like this bottom detail on the jacket, I'm going to seam rip it off so I can reattach it to the hemline. Now the time-consuming seam ripping begins. When it was fully removed, I had a piece that looked like this. I marked my new hemline with chalk before measuring the band to know how much to remove from my original hemline. Because I had buttons to take into consideration, I had to tweak where I would put my final hemline, and I added a 1/2 inch seam allowance as my cut line, which I measured out to be 5 inches. So I measured out the 5 inches I needed to remove. Since there was a pocket that I didn't want to completely cut in half, I curved my line towards the back to make it slightly longer in the back. Then I cut along my chalk line. Before pinning my band to place, I first folded each piece in half to find the center and marked with the pin, matching up the centers before pinning the rest in place. Once it was pinned, I sewed it in place, replicating the 2 top stitches that were originally sewn to keep it in place. And this piece was done. So for this next DIY, I am going to be hemming this shirt by replicating the lettuce hem. After trying it on, I measured how much I needed to remove from my hemline and mentally added 1/2 inch. Before measuring it out, I matched up my side seams and pinned to keep it in place before using pins to mark out my cut line, then cut it out. With my top inside out, I pinned a 1/2 inch seam allowance. To set my sewing machine up for the lettuce hem, I set it to a zigzag stitch, set the length low, and for the width, I started off with 2.5. I do recommend using a piece of test fabric before starting, and make any adjustments to your settings from there. When sewing your hem, you want to make sure the zigzag stitch is just catching the edge of your hemline, and pull it taut when sewing to get this lettuce hem effect. Once the sewing was done, all I had to do was trim away the excess. I took my time to be careful not to cut the wrong side of the fabric. I also noticed this shirt had a few little pulls in the fabric. So I took a hand needle and matching thread and threaded my needle through the pull, securing it with a small knot, then pushing the knot through the other side, then trimming away the excess thread. Okay, so now I am moving on to my third and final DIY for this video, which is this silk top, which I'm the most excited about making. So let's get started. So my vision for this top is to make this silk top into one that ties up in the back. The first thing that I am going to do is remove this bottom ruffle by cutting along the seam line. I will be saving this piece for later. I actually really liked the existing point of this top, so I'm going to keep that as a design feature. Next, I'm going to take in the sides of the top. I have tried it on and pinned how much I needed to remove from the side seams. Okay, so I realized while editing this, I made things way more complicated for myself by measuring out each individual side before cutting. For some reason, my first instinct was to cut the side seam so the front and back would be separated, when I should have just measured it out from there and cut both front and back together at the same time. So please save yourself the time and disregard my long drawn out process here, especially since this is a tie front, so the fit does not need to be perfect. Also, please excuse my makeshift weights holding the silk in place while cutting. I just didn't want to have any pin marks on my fabric. Then I sewed my side seams together. Next, with my top inside out, I am going to place my side seams together and mark out my center back with chalk. Then carefully cut along my center back line with fabric scissors. Going back with that piece I set aside earlier, it was time to dissect it until I had 2 of these tapered pieces. I am going to measure out the widest point and mark with chalk, and repeated this process to the other side. Before moving any further, I serged both of the raw edges to prevent fraying. Then I attached these tie pieces to the top. I wanted to save myself some work, so I made sure to keep the existing hemline intact. So all I have to do is line up the top to have a finished clean look. Also, when working with silk, it's important to press every seam as you sew to avoid that bubbly pulling effect that you sometimes get with working with more delicate fabrics. Now moving on to the hemline. So right now all my pieces are different lengths, so I am going to map out my new hemline, and I chose to keep the point of the top to have more of that bandana style top look, and I also tapered out the hemline to create a tie feature. I really just eyeballed this part and marked out how much I wanted to remove before leaving myself ½ inch seam allowance. Because I am working with silk, I decided not to pin my hemline before sewing, just to make it a little bit easier. So to create a double folded hem, I folded over ½ inch and sewed, and then folded it over once more and sewed it again to complete my hem. And this is the completed top. Okay, well, that concludes today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed my thrifted transformations. Please let me know which transformation you liked best down below, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more fashion DIYs, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!